Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. My name is Drew. I'm an accredited exercise physiologist and a registered Chinese medicine practitioner. And I specialize in exercise rehabilitation using both modern exercise rehabilitation science and traditional movement practices such as yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong and Pranayama. And we have this nice Venn diagram where they kind of intersect together. So we're learning how to use the old ways with the new ways, if you will. In terms of learning movement in exercise, we're looking at functional movement anatomy, so understanding how the body works with exercise. In today's video, we're going to look at the pelvic tilt, particularly the posterior pelvic tilt. And what are the two key muscles that are involved in the pelvic tilt? There are more, but like the two key muscle groups, if you will, and just why they're so important to kind of get right. Today, we're using the Muscles in Motions app. So as always, there'll be a link down below where you can jump on there and get yourself a subscription. We're going to be looking at a couple of different aspects of this app. It's really deep, it's really rich, so I highly recommend you go out and get yourself a copy. So the two key muscles that are going to be involved in the posterior pelvic tilt are the glutes as a muscle group and the abdominal muscle group. So if we review back to our anatomy, so we have the hip joint here. This is the ball and socket. So this is the pivot point. So the pelvis is going to rotate around this big ball and socket. Then we have the other joints that are really important are the lumbar joints here, because what we're going to do is we're going to flatten all these joints out. So there's a bit of an arch there. It's a lumbar lordosis or a lumbar arch. So when you create a posterior pelvic tilt, you actually flatten this arch out, so it loses its curve and it goes straight. So, and which is quite a normal mechanic to do. So what we want is spinal flexion, where this arch flattens out, and then posterior pelvic tilting. And so what that means is that the anterior superior iliac spines are going to go that way, and the PSIS, the posterior superior iliac spine, is going to go that way, and that direction going that way will spin around this axis of rotation, and that'll create the rotation of the actual pelvis itself. So if we have a look at here, so this is a hip bridge. So it's a classic exercise that we use to help train the posterior pelvic tilt. So reverse a little bit. So you're kind of starting there in neutral, and then as you start the movement, it flattens out. So here you have the spinal flexion component, and then a bit more of that tuck under, and then you press up. Still a little bit of flexion here, but now you can see it start to arch out a little bit. So as you get top to the bridge, the spinal curve goes the other way, and you get back into that extension. So at the top of the bridge, it's spinal extension. At the bottom of the bridge, it's going to be spinal flexion there. And at the very start, it's neutral spine. So I really love the hip bridge exercise because it trains neutral flexion to extension with control. And so you'll often see it in a lot of kind of rehab programs where people are trying to learn how to do bridge correctly. So it's a very great exercise. Now, if you watch the shape of the pelvis, as you flatten the lumbar curve here into spinal flexion, you'll notice that this comes that way. So let's just have a look at that. Flattens down, and that's the pelvic tilt there. So the angle is quite different. Now, what creates the lift is two muscles here. So you've got, this is the glute max, but you've also got the glutemedius, minimus, and piriformis. They're all going to be contracting, and they're going to be pulling. The way they position on the pelvis, when they contract, they create this tilt as well, and then you get the big glute max kind of take over. Then on the top, you've got the abdominal wall. So this is your rectus abdominus, your six-pack muscle, goes right down to the pubic bone. And so the action or the liner pull is going to be pulling this way. So you've got the abs pulling from the pubic symphysis here to the big bone that way. And then you've got the glutes essentially rotating and going that way. So like your glutemedius is going to come off the ilium here and go down onto the greater trochanter. So when it contracts, it's going to start to pull this that way, and then with the butt muscle pulling more this way, that in combination creates that rotation. So if we jump through, yeah. So if we jump through, I thought I forgot to put my microphone on, but it's here. If you jump through there, you'll see at the top you get into extension, and then you're going to come back down again. Oh, sometimes this is a cloud-based app, so sometimes it takes a bit to buffer. We'll bring it back down. And then we've got this nice diagram coming up here. So we've got this nice arrow pops in. So this is going to rotate that way. At the same time, you can see there, much better angle. So lumbar neutral spine here, and then we go into the lumbar flexion where the back flattens out, and the glutes are creating that movement there, plus the abdominal wall up through here. Put the muscles on there. With Maximus. Shows anymore. There we go. And then we have glute max and the abdominals pulling up this way. Take that back a little bit. A bit further. Yep, a bit further. There's a pelvic tilt right there. So it happens pretty quickly in this. It's a nice image right there. Okay, so we come back here, pause. It's a slightly different angle. So we're here in neutral again, neutral spine, nice lumbar lordosis there. Then we go into flattening the lower back, so that's lumbar flexion. Now, one of the cool things when you do lumbar flexion is that you are going to stretch the lower back muscles here. So when you're doing a bridge or a sit-up, this is essentially the start of your sit-up position as well. So when you do a sit-up, you'll often do a pelvic tilt, depending on the style or the technique of the sit-up you're doing. So with our reciprocal inhibition, when you go into pelvic tilting, because you're going to be using the abdominals and the glutes, you're going to reciprocally inhibit or relax the opposite muscles, which will be the back extensors. So just doing this movement itself can relax and release the lower back muscles. So when you do it intentionally, particularly when you're doing it with breathing exercises, it's really, really powerful way of kind of like helping people unwind really tight, hypertonic lower back muscles. At the same time, you're going to get this nice glute strengthening here. So because this is such a powerful glute exercise, when you note a pelvic tilt, when you're trying to recruit your glutes, what you want to be able to do is as you're coming up out of a lunge or a squat or a deadlift or a hinge or a step up, you want to create just a little bit of pelvic tilting. So here you're in anterior tilt. So to get the glutes on maximally, you want to come into neutral. Is probably the preferred, particularly if you're doing heavier training, you want to come into more of a neutral position. So you don't do the full anterior tilt, but you roll the pelvis into neutral. So we often say abs and butt, co-contracting together to create that space or create that shape. And then you'll be able to execute the move. So if you watch people who do really good deadlifts, for example, you'll see them as they come right at the top, they do a slight pelvic tilt under. Same with squats. And not so much lunges because the one leg forward, one leg back basically keeps the pelvis in a fairly neutral position, depending on the technique of the lunge. Now, if we jump into another one of the exercises here, so we're in the posture app, we're in therapeutic exercises, flat back, go and click on the exercise. So, you know, if you're into yoga, this is very cool. We have lots of very cool different yoga exercises here. That's a sequence. Oh, we've got core exercises, sorry. Exercises. And we want to show you this one down here, the posterior pelvic tilt. So I'll load up muscle motion again. Just move me out of the way a little bit. So you can do this on your belly. So here, you can see this rotation that's occurring. Axis of rotation is the femur or the hip joint coming through here. Now, the way to visualize this one is that the abdominal is contracting. So instead of pulling the ribs down, you're kind of pulling the pubic bone up, and that helps create the rotation because you're pulling the pubic bone up this way. At the same time, you can contract the gluteal muscles here as well at the same time and create that rotation. So you can do it in prone position. So this can be another really nice way of just training how to get your pelvic tilt happening. And you can see all the movements happening in the joints here. So in terms of mobility and just kind of hydrating and lubricating the lumbar spine, beautiful technique. You can do this on your belly or on your tummy, on your belly or on your tummy, on your back. Okay, the next one is more of a graphic representation of it. So you can see a great picture of the Gluteus Max creating that tilt, and then the rectus abdominis pulling up from underneath. That's going to get this stretching position through here. That's how all these joints get open. Of course, you've got the transverse abdominis and your obliques are going to be working here as well. So they're all doing what we call co-contracting. Good. Let's have a look at the next one. You can see the space that's created underneath the belly here. So that's much more an advanced one. So it's like here would be your, this a bit higher, this one here. So that's your plank position. All right. So when you're doing plank or hover, this is the shape you want to create because you'll have maximal abdominal contraction and your glutes will be engaged. So you'll have your hips and lumbar spine fully supported. Okay. This position here, because you're really trying to work on the lower abdominal wall. But in a plank, you'd normally be, or in a hover, you'd be on your forearms, and in a plank, you'd be straight arms. So depending on the position you want to be in. So again, the posterior pelvic tilt and the abs really work together. So I think if you're doing ab work, particularly the lower fibers of the abs, any kind of sit up, you will definitely want to be working on this kind of flattening of the lower back, tilting here. So you can imagine if you just flip that over so you're on your lower back, the ribs are being pulled down this way. Now, the last thing I'll say on this is with your breathing. So on inhalation, the ribs are going to flare up or expand up. So typically what you see here is that's inhalation there. All right, so this shape here creates more space in the thorax, in the ribs to get more air in. And then as you breathe out, these ribs are being pulled down and you're getting slight posterior tilt. That pushes the diaphragm up, which pushes the air out. So you would do this exercise on the exhalation particularly. Breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, breathe out. Good. And then inhale, come back down. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, breathe in. To that. So let's go through it again. Okay. Exhale, 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 exhale. Breathing in, breathing in, breathing in, and relax. So that's typically how breathing works with your lower back as well. So inhalation, if you go back to our previous video on the anterior tilt, inhalation creates a lumbar extension or a back bend or an arch, and that facilitates more air into the thorax and into the lungs. So you typically do axial extension, so you're growing tall and slight back bend or a slight lumbar extension. And then as you breathe out, because you want to increase the atmospheric pressure in the lungs so the air gets forced out, you then create a smaller shape. So all the ribs come together, the intercostals pull the ribs together, diaphragm pushes back up, and you get into this kind of shape here, which then pushes the air out. So you'll often hear me talking about core work is breathing and breathing is core work, or breath work is lots of biomechanical breathing techniques. If you're into breath work, if you understand how the diaphragm and the spine works, you can breathe a lot more functionally and a lot better. So particularly my method is I always try to teach people how to breathe correctly, because the breathing is so interrelated to how the spine moves, how the hip moves. Look at the shoulder blade as it's moving. Good. So here, inhale. Look at the angle of the shoulder blade here on the inhale. And then as you exhale, look at the angle. So, for example, if you're trying to do an overhead press and you start breathing out in this position, in the rack position, versus inhale, versus exhale, you can do it, but it doesn't just feel as natural, as smooth. That's because the mechanics aren't really connecting together. So super fascinating, right? So that is a good demonstration of the posterior pelvic tilt, okay, using the Complete Anatomy app. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. My one ask is that if you could give me a thumbs up and a like and a share, that would be awesome. That just helps build the channel up so we can share this knowledge with as many people as we can. So anyway, wherever you are, hope you have a great day. Keep training, keep studying, keep practicing, keep learning, be humble, and we'll see you on the next video. Cheers.